Welcome to the Heen View, a podcast series which interviews a range of local sports club representatives during the COVID-19 shutdown period. We find out what these clubs are doing during the current health crisis, which has seen current sports seasons postponed. I'm Mark Heen, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Stone. Welcome, Stoney.
Yeah, thanks, Heen. I'm looking forward to the guest today. It's given me great pleasure to do this guest this afternoon or this morning. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. It's a really interesting show that we have because obviously we're two Marks and, the Heen View being the two co-hosts. And we've got another Mark today. And our guest today is a prominent sports football-based administrator in Melbourne's West. He's one of the longest-serving chief executive officers in the history of the VFL, which is the Victorian Football League. He was appointed the Werribee Tigers VFL CEO way back in October 2003. That's almost 17 years ago. His roles have included General Manager of the Western Region Football League. He has an extensive history in football, both as an administrator and a player with the Port Melbourne Colts Football Club. He's a life member of the Port Melbourne Colts, and he's also a life member of the WRFL, which is the Western Region Football League. In 2018, he was awarded the John Nicol Community Service Award after being recognised for his outstanding work in the community. He's a tireless worker, he's a husband and a father, and an outstanding member of his community. We welcome to the Heen View the Werribee Tigers Football Club VFL Chief Executive Officer, Mark Penaluna. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. And how much do I owe you after all of that?
Well, one of the great things about our program, we like to have a great introduction. So,
thank you. Make me feel very old, but I'm starting to look at it as well.
Well, it's been probably a bit of a stressful time for you, not just when we think about the governments and some of the decisions that they've had to make, but, no football on. So we are in uncharted territory. And I guess what are the things, my first question is to you today, Mark Penaluna, and thank you so much for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you on. One of the first questions that I wanted to ask today is, what are you seeing in terms of the VFL football landscape at the moment, and what are you missing from clubland? Like, is it volunteers, seeing them on a regular basis, not just the players themselves, not being able to see football being played at Werribee, but what are you missing most at the moment from not seeing football?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That we've all grown up in clubland, and you grow up. Most of the clubs are the same. Your core volunteers who are there religiously, going beyond the call to assist the club. They could be sweeping, they could be blowing, they could be pumping footies up, whatever it might be. And certainly miss all of that. We've got our own core group with volunteers, your Dougie Joiners, your Ash Maloney's, and Jimmy Masterson, and all those sorts of guys. So we've got 40-odd volunteers missing that, have that daily interaction, banter, and hanging the proverbial on each other, and all those sorts of things that we've definitely been missing. Trying to stay in contact with those as best we can. The other part is, from a CEO's perspective, I find challenging is managing staff remotely. As Stoney knows, I'm not too literate with the IT point of view, and had to learn Zoom meetings and all the rest of it over the last few weeks, but I much prefer to sit down and have a conversation and try and provide proper context when you're explaining, particularly to young staff, and how this, when I'm asking of them, how does it fit in? And doing that remotely makes it all the more challenging.
Hannah, just for me, and as I know you have done for a long time now, and I know how you work and now how you operate, what's been the biggest, I suppose, the learning for you? Because you've been in administration, you've seen a lot of things in footy. Is this the biggest challenge you've ever had in your football life, and have you learned a lot in this period so far?
Yeah, it probably is the biggest challenge. So, taking on the Western Region role was challenging in its time. And when I first got there, I remember the president at the time, which was Rick Swan, father of Greg Swan, said that if we have a bad year in finals football, because we only had a little bit of money in the bank, if we have a bad year's finals football and we get rained out, then you can close the league down. Well, that was pretty scary to walk in the role. Then obviously when we started at Werribee Footy Club, we're close to 700,000 in the red. When your turnover is only 650, that's a worry. But this is the unknown. You can't really control how this is all going to play out. And we've had to develop 3 sets of budgets based on a whole lot of different assumptions. Initially, the 3 are simply if we're going to play games this year, are we going to play games with crowds? Are we going to play 10 games with no crowd? How does it mean to sponsorship function, our function centre, our entertainment venue, all those things? You factor in, as I said, a whole lot of assumptions, and because you're in the unknown, I think everyone is just scratching their head, and you're wasting a lot of time sometimes about factoring a whole lot of different scenarios. Your favourite word, Stoney, scenarios, and but it's just a fact of life. It's what you've got to do and prepare yourself, because the 2020 season might start in 4 weeks, and the staff have been advised to be prepared to run and jump and start in 4 weeks' time, or looking at more major projects that they can do over this hiatus type period, and then unknown of what's going to happen in 2021 as well.
One of the things I'd like to ask you, as someone that's involved at really, in some ways, the tier below AFL, what are some of the situations you've been faced with in terms of, what are you talking about with the players, but also from a facilities point of view? Because what we understand is that one of the hardest things with community football is that if, I live in the region of AFL Barwon, and whether or not they can get their games up and going, but the biggest thing with them is that they live in open parklands, right? So the grounds, there's no gates or anything like that, unlike the AFL where you've got the MCG and the I suppose Etihad Stadium, or Marvel Stadium in that sense, and the other stadiums around the country, is that you can play football and you can lock out the patrons. It's going to be hard at a community level, but you're a little bit in between here in some ways, because you've got to manage a facility also as well, which is part of the community, but you do have stands and you might have to get, cleaning jobs done around the place to make sure the place is looking all right. What are some of the challenges that you're facing as a CEO when it comes to that middle ground between AFL and community football?
Yeah, good question. I think the difference that we effectively has is we don't manage our stadium in totality. So we've had conversations with council about how this will play out from a health point of view. So the council are getting their head around, well, they run the away wing of our facility, where we run the coaches' boxes, stats, media, home change room. So we'll have to manage those from a health point of view, but council on the away wing. But also there's other areas within the facility, whether it's the seats, the grandstand, all that sort of stuff that the council would have to manage and operate. We've been given some broad guidelines from the AFL, but they have said that they're going to review that both for VFL and for community leagues, and whether we have to adhere to the exact same standards with or without crowds. So they'll seek that advice from the government authorities. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. That's
Mark,
really good.
Just what have you learned about yourself, Penner, in the period of time that I know you, as Mark said, you're a family man and you've got a wife and a couple of kids. Have you learned much about yourself, the administrator, or Mark, the person?
I've tried to stay calm, Stoney. I tend to occasionally kick things and things like that when if things don't quite go my way when I'm by myself sometimes. But I think that's just sometimes just the competitive urges that come out in me. That trying to strike that balance of and you reflect on it a bit that, as we know, we all work long hours in sport and funny times and things like that, that trying to find, a time during the daylight to take the dogs for a walk and things like that. And rather than doing it at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that what happens in sports life when you get home and you're eating dinner at 8:39, then you walk the dog and you go again. So trying to look at those sorts of things, it has allowed that, have that flexibility at the moment that we don't have to be there for training nights and these sorts of things. So that's the main thing, and trying to be measured and showing empathy for what people are going through, their own personal circumstance. I've been really, really lucky that the staff that we've got at the Werribee Football Club have really been outstanding, and they want to work together, they want to help the club out. We've worked on, and particularly Hamish and Mick Barlow and Mar and our community team of providing online content that's gone out to schools, and I've had really, really good positive messages about what we're delivering there. And just on the people, and you guys are both football guys, is that, and we often say, I certainly do, is that anyone can get a kick in footy when you're 20 goals up. Either you and I, Stoney, will still run around and get a kick if that's the case. But you learn a lot about people, and in the football parlance, when you're 2 goals down in the last quarter and there's 10 minutes to go, you can find out who are the ones who are naturally competitive, that want to do the right thing and try and get the team over the line, rather than, as I said, you're 20 goals up and you're running around looking good in the last quarter. So I think I've learned a lot about people, and generally I've been very, very happy with the team that we've got, including the board and the staff, and the sponsors and members have been fantastic. We haven't had a sponsor or a member come to us and ask about reimbursement or anything like that. So we're very, very fortunate.
What are some of the difficult conversations you've had with the players? And obviously you've got to take into account with players, particularly at a VFL level, is that they might be already combining another career outside of that. And look, I know of local players that might have done a pre-season at Werribee, and they're trying their hand in there, but they're also outside of the football career. They're a qualified carpenter, a tradesperson, and that sense point of view. I mean, obviously, even AFL Barwon perspective, if the scenario is that the season gets back up and running, they're going to have to reduce their capital spend per match, because that's just what we're faced with the moment, and the revenue streams are a bit thinned up. What are some of the conversations that you're having with the players, not just to retain on the list, but also what they're doing outside of football? Are they being totally 100% reliant on their income in their other field, education, or the trades person field?
Look, I've really been relying on a group of people, obviously led by Stewie Bellick, the football manager, Mark Williams, and with support from others, including our doctor, and also Damien Franklin, who's our welfare manager, as a group to stay across the players. And one of the things we said to the players quite early on is there's going to be a whole lot of conjecture, particularly played out through the media. The VFL for 2020, 2021, we're not going to be jumping and responding to all these things immediately, because that just creates, I suppose, in effect, mayhem. As we're losing control on these sorts of things. So we're trying to make sure we try and keep everything in balance and into perspective. The guys have been wonderful. The players, Stoney would know, I tend to send emails out after 9 o'clock at night. And I've been lambasted for doing that. So I try to pull those things back. And ironically, the times that I've pulled it back, I then joined a whole lot of WhatsApp groups, and the phone just keeps going ding, 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 ding. And it's players talking to each other, supporting each other, having a laugh and a joke, and doing silly games, and showing each other that they're training, they're lifting weights, they're going for runs and all these things. So they've really been their best support of each other, really, to be quite frank. And I've just been amazed at how mature players are, and they're a lot more mature than what certainly I was at the age of 20, 21.
There's a lot of spirit there. I know that, I can tell that, Mark. There's a lot of spirit at the footy club. Penner, has there been I know you're having a lot of conversations about the season, and is there a date when the season can start or can't start that you're being guided by, or is that still up in the air, still 100 different myriad questions and answers with that?
No, it's still up in the air. May 11 has been the date that in and around when we expect shortly after to have a clearer picture. There's still a little bit of conjecture about the AFL club involvement in the VFL. It appears unlikely that that would be the case, but it's not to say that things don't change as well. So, you watch these things, it's Footy Classified this, and there's another article there, and there's so many different hypotheticals, and part of the issue is there's so many people in the media that need to fill time in. They, I don't know, they quite make it up. Look, we have weekly meetings as a minimum with the AFL. They don't really understand how it's all going to play out. The whole thing is obviously about getting the AFL up and going itself. So I would expect, to answer your question, I'll be surprised if there's not a decision within May 20 to 25.
What's your discussions with AFL Victoria been about? Because a lot of these leagues, particularly countryly or in the country or metropolitan, I suppose they're not just following the advice of the government, but they're also in line with AFL Victoria. What are some of those discussions with AFL Victoria been like?
Well, all our dialogue has been with the AFL itself. We've been relying on them as a conduit to feed into community leagues. I know that the community leagues are meeting on May 12. I don't really know whether the community leagues are going to look at going ahead this year or not. So I can't really answer the question. Absolutely, mate. I'm sorry.
Mark, last one for me. You've done a lot, as I said at the start of the interview, you've done a lot in footy. You've seen a lot of things in life. In 10 years' time, when you're still involved with whatever club, hopefully Werribee, is this the biggest learning you've ever had in your life with regards administration, sport, football, the players, the people? Is this the biggest, will this take you forward and think, well, nothing else can challenge me? This has been the biggest challenge ever?
Well, yeah, probably so far, Stoney, but I don't think this is going to be what occurred over the last 5 weeks won't be the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge for our club will be once we understand what our environment is potentially going to look like. We're obviously feeding information to the AFL around what that might be, but we still don't know because we don't know what the funding models are going to be. We don't know what the effects are going to be around our income streams. We have a function venue and our entertainment venue, sponsorship and relations, and all these things that it'll take at least a year to 2 years to fully understand what particularly the financial ramifications are going to be, and therefore what our structure is going to look like as well from a Werribee Footy Club point of view, community level, and obviously up to the AFL. So I think everyone just needs to have the best intentions around what it means for Australian rules football, and potentially go back and simplify the structure that we currently have, and how it's going to, and look, what do we want this thing to look like in 5, 10, 15 years, and not immediately look at the next 12 to 18 months, I suppose.
Good answer.
One thing from me before we let you go is, what's the co-host Mark Stoney been like over the last 6 or 7 weeks? He lives in a different part of the world, but he has to get his laptop fixed at Werribee if there's something wrong, or he's the recruiting man. I mean, what's he like? What's he like as a person, Mark Stone? Is he quite intuitive? Like, is he on your back if he sees a good recruit, or if he's over in Tasmania and he wants to pick someone up or wants to have a conversation to get him back to come to Werribee? Do you enjoy a few little phone calls with him along the way? What are some of his what are some of the conversations?
Oh, no, absolutely. There's always conversations, but he would much rather have a what's his favourite breakfast again? Salmon and poached eggs. Scrambled eggs, salmon and scrambled eggs with a big latte, and have a conversation, and he'd be throwing questions at me left, right, and centre, And so, Stoney, it's not about the problems. It's got to we've got to work on the solutions here, mate. So,
All right.
no, and he'd be hanging out for those cafes to be reopened so he can sit down there and with his computer and his bag of notes and start all over again.
You're right.
We're actually doing a photo. We're actually doing a photo opportunity next week for a newspaper. So we'll let you know how we go. I'm sure he'll have his, pose or look happening in the photo.
Oh, no, absolutely. But the word that, Stoney uses the word a lot, but in his instance, he's absolutely right from his perspective. Is passionate is totally understated as far as Stoney, and whatever he does 1,000 miles an hour. And I remember there was a time that Nero and I were driving through Tasmania. And he said, "I've got to catch up with you." He said, "Well, we can talk over the phone." He said, "Well, no, where are you going to be in a couple of hours?" I said, "Mate, we're going to be in Queenstown in Tasmania." I don't know if you've been there before, but it's a place with no dirt footy ground or whatever it is. So he drove 2.5 hours to sit and have a 30-minute conversation with us in Queenstown because he wanted to talk about some Tassie recruits.
Was he in Hobart, was he?
I don't know where the hell he was, to be honest, but he could have just got off the boat for all I know. But that just shows the passion of the guy. And the Werribee Footy Club is very lucky to have, when you talk about volunteers, Stoney's been a volunteer now for 11 years, I think, in a volunteer capacity. So the club is very, very lucky to have him on board.
Yeah, and I'm as I said, I'm one of my best mates in that area also as a volunteer and has an honorary commitment doing the Stats Ben Carbonara over a number of years. So many people like that, your supporters, your volunteers, I'm sure they're just hanging out for footy to restart at some stage. And we really thank you, Mark Penaluna, for joining us on the program. It's great to get a great football mind or someone that has a different perspective, not just on a playing side, but some of the challenges you face from an administrator point of view. So we thank you for being on the Heen View.
No problem, boys. Thanks very much for having us, and it's a great initiative. Well done.
Thanks,
well,
Mark.
Thanks so much, Mark Stone. How good's that? Getting Mark Penaluna on the program. How good is it?
We only go to the best, mate, and he's one of the best in the business. So I'll pay you later, Penner. But he's a very good operator, and let's hope the VFL kicks off soon, Mark.
Absolutely, Stone.
Well, you can get in contact with the Heen View. You can check us out on Facebook. We've just been released to the iTunes. So just type in the Heen View on Facebook. As I mentioned, we're on iTunes as well. Next episode, we're going to be chatting to someone very important in the community. She's actually an Australian netballer. So to find out our next guest, tune into the next Heen View podcast, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, boys.